So how you want to tell the listeners how you did on your competition 11? That was an 11 bird, right? That you just flew?
Yeah, the 11 bird. That was this last weekend.
Yeah.
My birds flew fantastic. I didn't DQ this time. They did all right. It was kind of scary at first. About the 10-minute mark, they looked like they were getting a little bit tired, like they might want to come down. But the wind picked up a little bit. They got a little bit of elevation, and then a hawk showed up. So when the hawk showed up, that maybe saved my butt. I count it as a win. I'll put him on the payroll if he did save my butt, because that's kind of cool. But he put him up so high that the judge wasn't able to score it. And it's no fault of the judge. Big Bird was not on my side. It was a lucky break. It was a lucky break before it was ever a bad break. I'll put it that way. I'd rather have him show up and push him up in the air and keep my score.
Yeah, man, like that's the odd thing. Like usually a hawk showing up or whatever, bird of prey showing up, that's not a good thing. That usually leads to an immediate DQ because it just throws a wrench in everything.
Yeah, they'll go up so far. They're not like a homing pigeon that'll come racing to the, to cover. They go way up in the air.
Yeah, we talked about that before. I think, like you said, that's a tippler trait. That's inside of them. That high flyer evade the predator.
Well, I don't know if all of them do that. I got to clarify that. I don't know if all of them do that. The breed that I have is a high flying breed. They'll tend to fly a lot higher than some rollers. Some will keep a nice 40, 60, 80 feet. Some will go up 400 feet. Just depends. Some of that is management too. Some of that has to do with how you manage your kit, how high they're going to fly. But a lot of it has to do with what bloodlines you're carrying too.
Well, we're going to be doing an episode on nutrition. That's the name of the game today. We have Green Valley Grains is going to be coming on here. They're a small boutique stock feed manufacturer located in Beaconsfield, Victoria. They spent the last 10 years building the foundations of a strong and prominent brand in the Australian stock feed industry. These guys do real custom blend stuff.
Is it tomorrow or yesterday there?
It's tomorrow there.
Okay.
Hi. Lovely to meet you.
I'm just playing with my little bird here. Don't mind me.
Oh,
I got
it's bring your bird to work day.
Yeah. Nice. So do you have a flock of pigeons, Megan?
No, I sadly do not. I have more of a flock of other animals like horses, goats, chickens. We have the menagerie at our place, other than pigeons.
Man, I think a lot of guys get so many pigeons they think about opening up a feed store, and you got the feed store going and you don't have the pigeons. You got to fix that.
That's it. We cater to all animals. We do bird, hobby farm animals, poultry. We do huge in poultry, everything in between. We even do rabbits and guinea pigs and all of those little pocket pets as well.
It's just starting to sound like my house.
I think once you start, then it's kind of, you keep adding on.
Oh yeah, I need to get myself a feed store.
Yeah. So we supply the feed stores with whatever they want. We clean and dress the grains. We blend the grains. We ideate different products to whatever their customers want.
So you guys operate your own mill and do all your own blends yourself?
Yes. Yeah, we're a feed mill in sort of the southeast of Victoria, down south in Melbourne, and we cater to sort of more of the hobby market. We don't do bulk tanker trucks into commercial properties, but we do into small hobby farm customers. Yeah, so we don't do into like poultry farms or dairy farms or anything like that. We do into the likes of your demographic, your listeners' demographic of backyard animal lovers that have a hobby, and yeah, we feed their animals.
So just to jump right into it, because you guys do like a boutique style with all the different blends, can you explain why rollers, fancy pigeons, racers, high flyers, why do they need a different blend of seed? And
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting getting into I suppose, the science behind grain blends. And so we at our establishment, Green Valley Grains, we blend to what our customers want, and our pigeon range has come from just talking to our customers basically, and because we have a range of 5 different blends for our pigeon guys, and they're all trying to meet a different need. So when you're talking in your fanciers and things like that, they're not an endurance type bird, so they're not looking for performance in that sense, in a racing sense, so they don't need as high a carbohydrate level there, or a higher fat level. They're looking for a trajectory upwards so they can tumble downwards. So it's a totally different, the breed is different as well, their big size is different, so then for the seed type is going to be different within the blend. So we communicate really well with some top breeders within the industry, and we work with them to design our blends off what their recommendations are. And we also have a few vets in the industry that we work with as well. So our blends are just seed mixes. So what we do then is recommend that our customers then balance out their ration with either a multivitamin or a concentrate pellet or something like that as well. So it just depends on the individual, because everyone has an idea on how they want to feed, and we certainly don't dictate that. So we just try and meet the need of what our customers want.
would you actually make a custom blend if somebody gave a request for something like that?
We try not to, because there's so many different ideas out there. So what we do is try and make the most of what the general population want and try and meet that need. So like, for instance, we have a high flyer mix that has hemp seeds in it, for instance. So that one at the moment is quite popular because hemp seeds over here are quite popular in the pigeon market. So that one's quite different because there's no other one out there that has a hemp seed in it. So those are the kind of things that we will do and because we're a more of a boutique mill, we have the adaptability within the scope of the mill to be able to make changes to blends, or add to the breadth of our product offering pretty quickly if there's a need for it.
With all the different blends, are there certain main ingredients that kind of is a common thread throughout all of them that they just have to be there?
100%, and that comes down to, obviously, with racing pigeons, for instance, you want a high carbohydrate blend, and a high fat blend. So you want to meet the needs of, thinking of them as pigeon athletes, for instance. So you want to make sure that they're meeting their energy requirements for the output that they're performing at. So you want high carbohydrate, high fat to make sure that the bird is loaded with enough energy, enough fat storage to withstand the distance that it's trying to fly, and so it comes back home and not as totally depleted of energy. So we make sure that we're using maize or a popcorn, so depending on the size of preference that the customer wants, some like whole maize, some like popcorn. They're 2 different sizes of kernel. Then you might use sorghum, and you might have, a slight amount of protein, not too much, because a racing bird doesn't need too much protein. That's just an inefficient way to provide energy. Then you'll have some fat sources, so seeds, so safflower, linseeds, hemp seeds, things like that, to provide a nice overall blend of carbohydrates, fats with a slight amount of protein.
Is there any one single grain that a pigeon can keep well on?
Like traditionally, a lot of pigeon breeders would have like used wheat or rice or something like that. And that's because, for one, that's maybe all that was around at the time. The birds would have done okay on that, but they wouldn't have performed at their best. So you may see some older traditionalists that may just use just wheat, or may just use maize, or may just use rice. They may not have the best birds going around, or they might have some genetic freaks that still might do very, very well. If you want to look for performance and you have giving the bird the best opportunity to perform well, the key is to provide a balanced diet and thinking of them as little athletes, really, because you're asking them to perform something that is out of the realm of and under pressure and for a prize. So it's like a racehorse in that sense, right? You can't ask the Kentucky Derby winner to win on just oats alone. It's going to have a complete balanced ration, okay? So the same thing, we want to give the birds a balanced ration. So a blend of seeds and grains that are going to provide great carbohydrates, great fats, balance that out with a multivitamin premix, which there's many on the market, or a concentrate pellet. It's the way to go.
So I guess my next question would be, if I'm feeding a mixed grain feed to multiple birds, we're all pretty much going to eat a little bit different, even if they're bred they're going to.
Yeah.
How do I know that they're each getting a wholesome, they're getting everything that everybody else is getting?
100%. And that's where that argument comes in between feeding grains or feeding pellets as well. So, and that comes down to the individual and the feeding practices and the husbandry of the loft. Like, some people like to feed the convenience of a pellet that way. So feeding a pellet, you sort of a little bit more guaranteed that the bird may be getting a more balanced ration because everything is in the pellet at one go. But palatability of pellets can be a bit tricky to get a bird onto a pellet. They can be a little bit
soft.
Yeah, that's it. They can be a bit dusty. I find, like with poultry, for instance, once they've had seeds, they won't go back to pellets and things like that. And their droppings can be a lot sloppier because they'll drink a lot more water with them, that kind of thing. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just the matter of what suits you as the individual, as the carer, what you find that your birds will and won't like, and how much time you have on your hands. So there's multiple ways to get the right result. It's just which way you would like to do it.
So I'm thinking about this pellet thing, right? Because when I was doing the mixed grains, my pigeons would just tear through everything to get to their favorite seed and just food all over the place. And I'm like cleaning the trays, and I'm like, well, this is half droppings and half food, So I did switch over to pellets, and they still, I don't know if it's the size of the pellet they're looking for. It's not as severe as before, but they still pick through and make a big mess. I mean, why do you think a pigeon does it? Do you think it's just they got a favorite thing, or do you think that their body is like craving something that seed has? Or
it's interesting, the argument of do they search for things that their body is lacking? There's a little bit of data out there to say that they'll search for things like salt. They'll search for things like, potentially they'll search for calcium, so grit. So I'd always have on offer grit if possible. It certainly helps with digestion. There is a potential argument to have some salt on offer as well for them to peck at. If possible, especially in pellets. The blending of salt can be poured up in pellets, and so they'll often look for the chunks of it. And same with the calcium, the grit, it can be in chunks, so they'll actually look for that as well. So there could be argument for that's what they're looking for. In things like in grain and seed blends, they'll definitely look for the high fat, high value seeds and grains first, because they're like candy in a sense. So we find that all the time in feedback from customers that they'll always, It's like kids, they'll go for the sweet stuff first. So yeah, that's just a given. And just the way that they eat is that head movement. So they sort of sift as they eat, and that's just a messy way of eating.
It's not worse than quail.
Frustrating.
Yeah,
quail are terrible. Yes,
they're worse. Worse
yeah,
thing I've found.
yeah, agree.
Yeah. Can you tell me off the top of your head what safflower contains?
Safflower is a great source of fat and a fair bit of fiber as well. Like the outer shell of safflower is quite high in fiber. So a great energy source for a long distance bird. You're going to get some great fat storage from adding safflower. Great for feathering as well. If a bird's going through a molt, you could add a bit more safflower to their ration. I really like safflower. We use it a lot over here. Yeah.
High in protein?
Fairly high in protein as well, actually. It's got a good protein value to it, but it's more valuable in fat. Yeah, we use it a lot in bird blends.
I guess that was a relative question. Do you know the percentage off the top of your head? That I have available is 7 to 9% and about 20%.
Yeah, that's
fat.
That's pretty. Over here, we're getting about 14% protein in safflower.
Okay.
Yeah, so anything from 10 and above would be average.
And Milo's real good stuff, right?
Yeah, sorghum is good. Yeah, sorghum. The birds tend not to enjoy it too much, we find over here, but it is great. It's really, really good. Yeah.
They don't tend to eat it till last.
No, they don't tend to like it. I don't understand.
That's what concerns me on a mixed grain diet.
It's the tannin. It's a little bit of the tannins in it as well. Like red sorghum has got tannin. That's why you guys use a white over there, don't you?
No, white's the most expensive thing around. It's using the pet. If you're gonna buy it in a bag at a feed store around here, it's gonna be red, or you're gonna. Yeah. Last time I found white was $7 for about a cup of it. It's ridiculous.
Oh my goodness! Right? Okay. Yeah. It's very hard to get white over here. We use red as well, but the tannins in it is what makes it a little bit tarty and sour in taste. Yeah.
It probably grow pretty good out there. Grows good.
Oh yeah.
So why is the protein always with this, like the main label?
Yeah, protein
14%, 15, 16%.
Yeah. Because protein's the high value that shows quality, I suppose. And I suppose it's a little bit of tradition as well in feed milling. So in feed milling, when you have, so for instance, our mill is what we call a feed safe accredited mill. So it's Australia's gold standard in feed milling. And a part of that, we have regulations that we have to abide by. And one of those things is labeling. So labeling on the back of the bag, we must disclose protein value, for instance, and protein has to be number one, and it's to show the quality of the feed ingredient. So protein has been traditionally the first sign of quality in any manufactured feed. So that's traditionally why everything has a protein value to it. Non-breeding feeds and things like that, protein's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. It's definitely an indication of the quality of the ration in a traditional sense. It's something that a consumer will look for just because they know that's something that's important on the back of the bag.
During breeding season, we get the higher protein stuff just because it's a lot of energy. I look at it as like an energy thing, energy in, energy out. They're going to use a lot during breeding season. Yeah.
So, and that's where we can't get confused, where protein is actually a very inefficient energy source. So we don't use it for long distance race birds. We wouldn't use it as we wouldn't use a high protein feed for a racing bird. But for a breeding bird or a bird under molt or something like that, we would give them the support of protein for that. It's building blocks. It helps build things. So that's where protein is very, very, very important. So after a race, protein's really important because it helps rebuild muscle that may have been lost or damaged from the race. But for preparing for or during, protein's not your friend.
And it's carbohydrates that you guys
yes,
are going
carbohydrates
for.
and fats. Yeah.
With people who have a mixed grain and then their birds come in and the last bird's always going to get what nobody else wanted. And then that cycle continues.
I mentioned that's what we were talking about earlier. I feel like if nobody would ever intentionally feed safflower to a competition bird or Milo to a competition, or to two different birds in their kit, only one to this and one to that, they're going to be fed out different. So if one gets to fills up on safflower first and that last bird, it winds up full of Milo, you're never going to keep any sort of consistency. That's what I'm thinking. What do you think?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, you're always, the first in is always going to get the pick of the blend, and they're always going to pick out their favorites. So they're going to fill up on all the fatty stuff, not necessarily fill up on what they actually need. And then the poor fella that comes in last, he's always going to get not necessarily what he actually needs, and he's never probably going to reach his potential. That comes down to feeding practices and the setup of your lofts and whereabouts your feeders are. If there's a way to segregate your birds and how they come into the loft, I'm not sure on everyone's got a sort of a different system, I suppose. But
well, on competition birds, any competition bird that I'm aware of.
Coming into the truck.
They're gang fed.
Yeah.
They're fed after they come in about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And they're all gang fed. But some of them eat faster than others. The cockbirds generally stand still and just eat. The other ones are running around and around. So that's where I see a lot of that. If I was feeding 2 different or 4 different grains, they're picking the one they like the most first. Yeah. And that smart old bird, he's going to hammer down and get all that safflower in him. And he's eating different than the last one is. There's never going to be a sense of consistency.
Yeah, and that's where the argument against pelletized feeds comes in, because then you've got a consistent ration, or their one grain argument comes in. And 2, recovery after race. So when they come back to the home loft, then the recovery program starts. So a lot of savvy racers will have a recovery program. So that may well be, a 3-day stage or a 3-day to a week stage of a different feeding program. So that may well include different supplementation, including electrolytes and things like that, as well as a different change up in the blend of the grain. So that may include a higher protein level to help restore and rejuvenate muscle, as well as supporting the energy systems that have been lost. So that's also including extra carbohydrates, extra energy for body weight loss, so they can recover better. So again, thinking about the pigeon like an athlete, what it's actually done, it's flown long distance, it needs to recover, it needs to recoup, and we need to support that.
Or play ball after the game.
100%.
Drinking milk.
And the more people that think of them that way, instead of just being a bird that's just done something that a bird normally does, they've got to think of them differently. They've got to think of them as an athlete.
Fact is, they're doing things that a normal bird would not do on purpose.
That's right, on purpose. Exactly right. It's the same as thinking about them as an equine athlete. We're forcing them to do them. So we need to support them through it.
So if somebody doesn't have access to different pigeon blends or even pellets and stuff like that, what would you say next best thing would be for them?
Next best thing would be is to go to the high value items. So if they're looking for racing birds, go to the highest carbohydrate value grain. for racing. And then if you can, try and some source of supplementation. The worst case scenario, do at least some grit and some calcium. And then having obviously good sources of clean fresh water, all those simple things, simple husbandry, that's the bare minimum. Possibly having that combination of one carbohydrate source, one fat source, one protein source. That would be my recommendation of that, with some grit, fresh water, and then that would be your bare minimums.
Yeah, kind of make your own blend that way and tweak it as you need then. Yeah.
Tweak it as you need it, and then as you get better at things, then start looking to add things to that.
Do you make a pellet blend as well?
No, we don't do pellet, just straight grain blends.
Grain blends, okay.
Yeah.
So here in my hometown, there's a very popular poultry feed that contains a red pellet. From playing with horses, I know it's called calf manna.
Mm-hmm.
It's 22% protein.
Ooh, it's high.
Yeah. And I know some guys that feed their pigeons with it. I used to feed chickens with it. Okay. They feed their pigeons with it.
Yeah, that makes me quite nervous.
When they're raising babies, I can see who feeds it from 50 feet, because when they're raising babies, they're belching red. They have red. All the babies have red bibs. It's hilarious. Anyhow, they eat that first, 100%. 100% they eat that pellet first, especially the feeding parents. Now that's when I started going, hey, wait a second, that's not good. That bird's eating 22% protein. The one on the other end's eating that whole corn that's like 7%.
Yeah. What concerns me, as well as that protein level, but is the calcium level in that was going to be through the roof, because it's designed for a horse. So a pigeon only needs 1% calcium. That would probably be at 4.5, 5, 6% calcium for starters. So you're going to run into long-term problems there. The copper level in that is going to be through the roof for a pigeon. So you're going to run into oh my god, it's giving me anxiety just thinking about that.
Well, like I say, it's not a
no
pigeon.
wonder they're red. It's the copper coming out and the iron in that. Oh my god. Yeah.
It's not a pigeon feed. That's why I didn't I'm
Please,
not
people
naming
listening to that, don't feed horse feeds.
It's not a pigeon feed, it's a poultry feed. But
yes. And poultry, but even
it is a premium
feeding poultry feeds.
It's a premium
So
poultry feed, but it's not a pigeon feed.
Yeah, so even poultry feeds. So poultry feeds on the calcium side of things, they're sitting at say 3 to 4.5% calcium. Pigeons, again, as I said, only need 1%. It's too much. It's too much for them. So yeah, not a great idea. Don't feed poultry mixes to pigeons.
Well, that's interesting, because I've known more than one person. One guy does racers, one guy does high flyers, and he does a blend of his own, and he adds alfalfa pellets into it. What do you think about that? That's like grass.
Well, yeah. So,
really cool color.
We call it lucerne over here. Lucerne, people. So alfalfa pellets. So alfalfa or lucerne is really naturally high in calcium, obviously. So probably the risk to that is the calcium balance, the ratio of calcium to phosphorus. So that ratio is going to be the wrong way around in the whole balance of the ration for the bird. So the risk to that is the malabsorption of phosphorus to calcium. So what can happen there is you're going to run into issues with bone deformity in the young birds. You may run into risk of numerous issues in the older birds as well. So lucerne is a fantastic fodder source, but for pigeons, if it's it's in the wrong ratios, so you may find problems with that.
So any kind of horse feed is not a good thing to be given.
Yes, let's blanket that. Horse feeds for pigeons bad. Yeah.
Got it. Well, we're definitely coming up against the clock. Megan, we really appreciate you coming on, and we definitely got a lot of listeners in Australia, so all you guys out there, make sure, if you can, buy the Green Valley grains. They know their stuff, and they're willing to come onto our podcast and help promote the hobby, so we got to support that.
You're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, a lot of
Anybody?
fun.
Yeah, this was really informative. We
Anytime.
definitely hit you up with a lot of questions really fast, but we try to keep it real condensed that way.
I try to keep Lovely to meet you both.
This is great. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much, guys.